are we this week? I personally am in my pajamas, as you can see if you're not listening and watching the video. They're bright pink, and I realize I blend into my chair completely. So, yeah, I'm today on my chair, and that's kind of the vibe I'm bringing. I feel like usually when I do the podcast, I hop in and I have a bunch of energy, and I'm like, today we're gonna reel that in just a little bit because I've just been in the past week. I feel like I've been in a very meditative headspace. Just it being the first week of the year, going into the second week of the year. Right? We're going into the second week of the year. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I said pretty much. Yeah. Second Monday of the year is tomorrow, based off of when I'm filming this. Yeah. How I film, if you guys care at all, I film on Saturdays, and then I edit on Mondays and then post on Mondays. I'm going to start trying to put them out on a more consistent time, but, you know, is what it is. So, but yeah, the start of the year for me is always extremely meditative, and also I think a huge challenge for most people because, you know, you're hopping into like all your New Year's resolutions and you're like, I gotta do all these things. And I think a lot of people feel like if they fail the first week, then that's like the big revealer of like how the year's gonna go for you, which is not true at all. And that mindset is horrible. I actually am gonna talk a lot about like all or nothing mentality here in a minute, because I've been seeing some really good commentary online about it, which I've really enjoyed that, not discourse, I don't think people are arguing, but just like it's a topic that people are speaking about right now, and I also will throw my hat in the ring on that topic. But anyways, I've been in a very meditative headspace, and I think I'm going to bring that energy to the pod today, because I can be calm and normal. I can't reel in, like, the ADHD, like, I'm gonna be all over the place to some extent, but I did not drink a Monster Energy before filming today. I usually do, or while I'm doing it, and then I feel crazy. But, it's also really late when I'm filming today. I usually film at, like, 12, like, after I eat lunch, and that did not happen today. Today, that did not happen, because I was locked into One Piece. Crazy One Piece episode I watched. It was episode 485. If you know, you know. Some crazy stuff happened. I had to sit down and process One Piece, and then I got off track, and I was baking bread, which is something else I'm going to get into. So I started to get into baking bread, and this is all going to be a lesson on, if you're not watching, you got to look at the screen for this next part. So this is going to be a lesson in doing things that you suck at. First loaf of the year. This is how it turned out. Yeah, do you want to hear what it sounds like? Yep. First loaf of sourdough ever. Look at how it turned out. Absolutely a brick. An absolute, like, break your teeth. I'm gonna try to, I hate throwing things away and I hate wasting materials, so I think I'm gonna, like, cut it up and make it into croutons. That's what I'm gonna do. So there still is, even when you mess something up, the lesson is you can turn it into something. But yeah, the starter that I used, I guess just, like, was too old, or it just didn't have enough yeast in it, like enough of the bacteria, so it turned into a discus. I'm gonna throw it at the track meet. I throw the discus, and I'm gonna throw this. Like, if I had 500 of these, I could build a house. It's, like, look, like, I'm gonna try to break it in half, like, it's not, and I'm not playing around, like, this is not, so, right, but did that stop me? Did I get off the horse? No, I said giddy up, because I want you to look at the bread loaf that I made today. Okay? I investigated what I did wrong. I didn't get upset. I investigated what I did wrong. And then, look at this loaf of bread. The loaf of bread. It's beautiful. I'm so happy with it. It's very tiny. And I think I'm going to double the recipe the next time I make it. But like, look at this gorgeous loaf of bread that I made. Oh my gosh, I made the bread. I also made bagels today, and I made sourdough muffins the other day. So much fun. So much fun. And I'm so happy with this loaf of bread. Now, I need to cut into it. Maybe it's inedible. Speaking, sorry. Autocorrect, am I right? Sorry, it's such a bitch. Anyways, but I might cut into this, and who knows, maybe it's terrible. But I have a feeling it's going to be very good. So, this is very exciting that I made my first sourdough loaf that looks edible. So, that's all to say. Don't give up, follow your dreams, keep pursuing, and failing is part of the process. Because I feel like I used to, like, when I would fail at something, when I would make something that looks like it would have been sold while Jesus Christ was alive, I would have probably thrown it across my kitchen, kicked, screamed, and cried, and told myself that, like, I was awful and horrible and terrible at everything. But I'm trying not to do that anymore, because getting angry only makes the process take longer and more frustrating and not fun. So we were talking about last week letting go of anger. So when it came out like this, when I pulled it out of the oven, I laughed, and I went, well, I guess it happens to all of us. But I know with sourdough, like, a lot of people were like, I failed for the first 50 loaves of bread I made, so I'm glad I didn't get 50 in. But, oh my god, my ring! Drats! Oh my god. I didn't get angry, and I stayed calm enough to do some research about, like, where I went wrong, and then I applied all those things to the next loaf that I made, and look, it turned out! So this is all a lesson in never give up, always believe in yourself. And failure is literally part of the process. So, yeah, pretty much failure is part of the process. Pretty much you have to fail to succeed. Pretty much that's how life works. Yeah. And that kind of goes into my thing I wanted to talk about, like, all or nothing mentality. Like, I think it's a lot, at least for me, like, I grew up going to school, and the school system, I went to school growing up. In the school system I was in, it was very much all or nothing mentality was taught to us, and it was like, I went to a very high performing school, like, with all the standardized testing, and so everything had to be, it had to be all or nothing mentality, because you only took that test, like, once. And so it was like, you always have to get it right. Our logo was a bulldog. We were like, they would say, we're bulldog tough. You gotta be bulldog tough. And so I got implemented bulldog tough way too deeply in my psyche. And I think a lot of us are being bulldog tough when we need to be bulldog patient. Let's be bulldog patient, guys. Because, like, so many of us live in this mentality of all or nothing, and that is just setting you up for failure. When, like, all or nothing mentality, you're more likely to fail than succeed, because you're just not giving yourself the opportunity to succeed, and you're putting too much pressure on success for success to actually happen. Like, success is an earned thing. It is not a automatic thing. Like, trying means eventually, and the continuation of trying is how you will eventually succeed. And something I've been seeing online is people talking about how, like, all or nothing mentality prevents us from taking baby steps. And I saw someone talking about, like, using this example of, like, going to the gym. They're like, people feel like if they can't put in 100% at the gym, then they're just like, well, I shouldn't even go at all. And they feel like, I can only put 40% in. And it's like, yeah, then put in 40% that day. And then they also applied it to, like, being vegan, of like, oh, I would love to be vegan, but, like, I love bacon. It's like, okay, I'm vegan, but I also have bacon. And applying that to, like, you can apply that to anything. And I just, like, when I heard it, I was like, oh! And that makes perfect sense. Of, like, you can do things, and you don't have to fully commit to things to do them. Which I think is a crazy concept to all of us. And when I heard it, I was like, oh, it's so obvious. You give what you can, and that's the best you can do, and that's beautiful. And that's beautiful. Because I really struggle with all or nothing, like, black and white mentality. And when I heard that, I was like, this is genius. This is revolutionary. Of, like, just like, putting in the amount of effort that you can put in is, like, everything that you can put in. And so it is kind of, like, you're doing it all. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, perfectionism, we were talking last week about ins and outs of 2026. Out. Perfectionism. Goodbye. I've been trying to invest in doing more crafts and doing just more hands-on things, like trying to avoid the hell box that's sitting next to me. And I think part of getting back into just being a person and doing hands-on activities, because you're so used to watching people online do things and you're like, oh wow, that's so perfect. Like, look, they just did that flawlessly. But, like, you don't see the hundreds of hours of, like, learning a skill or a craft before they started posting it online. And I think just constantly watching short form videos of, like, people doing something perfectly, air quotes, and I'm sure the artist who's doing those things or the craftsman who's doing those things doesn't think it's perfect. They're giving themselves notes, but they're advertising the product of their entertainment, of the process of their art or their craftsmanship. And so of course they're going to be like, this is the perfect right way to do it, even if they're not saying that, or like, this is how I flawlessly do this thing. And it's just like, you're never going to develop a skill and instantly be good at it. Like, even before, like, I know it's like, well, Brinly, you got the loaf right on the second try you did it. It's like, well, that was also because I put not hundreds, but, like, lots of hours in before I even touched the bread. Like, I've been watching sourdough videos for, like, 2-3 straight months, and I've been talking to, like, my mother-in-law about it. I've been talking to my grandma about it. Like, just, like, people who bake, like, just having conversations with them and hearing their hot takes and asking them questions before I even touched it. And then it's like, I bought some starter. I didn't immediately make my own starter because I was intimidated by that. And I bought some starter. And, like, part of the issue with my starter, which is why this loaf didn't come out, was that there wasn't enough water in the starter. And I had been following the recipe that had been given to me for feeding the starter. And I was just like, because I had learned enough about the sourdough, like, process before I ever tried to make any, I looked at the starter and I was like, this just looks too dry. Like, this just doesn't look like there's enough, like, it's being fed properly. So I just added in 25 grams more of water. And that, like, completely changed it and improved it so that this second one worked. So it was, you know, the hours of watching the videos before I ever got there that made me have that thought. And if I hadn't done the research beforehand, then who knows how long it would have taken me to figure out. And maybe I would have made 50 incorrect loaves trying to figure it out. So it's something I've had to learn how to do too, about just, like, doing the best you can, and that's your 100%. Like, that's the takeaway. Do the best you can do is your 100%. That's not, like, if you're like, I can only give 40% today. Okay, well, that's 100% of what you can give. 40% is 100% of what you can give. Does that girl math make sense to y'all? Like, it's like, and not being scared of failure and perfection, like, getting over perfectionism because we're so used to seeing what we think is perfectionism, which isn't. Because they failed 100 times, they just didn't post it. Like, maybe they have projects that, like, they posted and they didn't post because they flopped, you know? And I think getting back to hands-on activities, and I think people want that so badly right now because of AI and because of just how stressful the world is, like, doing physical things to reconnect with just, like, feeling like a normal human being. I know so many of us are reaching towards that again, and it's very exciting to see that even that some people, there's a semblance of people wanting to return to some normalcy before the hell boxes took over our brains. Because, like, I grew up with social media, and I really truly wonder what my psyche would look like if I had never had access to this hell box. Like, I don't know who I would be. Like, and clearly, like, I make a podcast, like, I keep up with trends, and I'm still very much on my phone. I'm very chronically online in a way that, like I've been saying, I'm trying to improve upon. but it's like, and there is so much value in it, and I think progress is happening so quickly in society, thankfully, because of our little hellbox phones. But it's, at the same time, it's like I fundamentally don't know who I would be as a person if I hadn't grown up on the internet. And so I'm really trying to find that by investing in so many hobbies. Like, while I was baking the bread and stuff, I also, because you have to, like, you know, it's a long all-day process, at least the recipe I was doing. And I got a sewing machine for Christmas, and so I was sewing I'm going to see Halsey tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Tuesday, but this week. And I'm so freaking excited, but I did not have an outfit prepared for the concert because I didn't know that I was even going to the concert, but my boyfriend surprised me with tickets for Christmas. And I did not have time to lock in, so I found like an old skirt from, let me grab it, it's right here. So I was sewing again. I haven't sewn since high school. Talk about all or nothing mentality, like sewing and projects, like, oh, duh, so I feel scared talking about it. Like, my high school theater experience, like, because I was a costume designer, the most all or nothing mentality, like, environment I've ever been in my whole life. I literally, like, I try not to think about it. When I think about high school theater, I literally shudder and quake. Like, my heart gets nervous. Like, and it's, like, trauma I've deconstructed, but, like, so that was a big one. Like, sewing yesterday, I was, like, nervous. Because I haven't sewn since high school theater because the trauma I have around that whole subject for myself is, like, it's something I will definitely get into someday with y'all, because it very much shaped who I am, it shaped my mentality, and I'm sure you'll hear little bits and pieces of that story. You know, maybe at some point I'll do, like, a full story time over that situation, because the situation was super crazy, but it's something you're going to continue to hear me referencing. Because it really shaped me as a person. But anyway, so I'm really scared of, like, fucking up sewing projects because of, like, the anxiety and trauma I have around that situation. So I got a sewing machine for Christmas, and I was like, okay, let's, like, lock in and, like, upcycle. Because also I'm trying to get into upcycling clothing. I have so much clothing, and I'm either just, like, I want to donate it and get rid of some of it, but also some things I want to keep and, like, turn into something I will use. And because I'm, like, I was already getting rid of it, I feel pretty free to, like, get creative and explore with it. So, anyways, this skirt was, like, this is the new skirt. It's a mini skirt. It's a mini skirt. Very, yeah. So I have little, like, bloomers go under it. But it used to be, like, a long jean skirt, and now, like, look how cute it is! Ah! You can follow me on Instagram. I'll definitely be posting, pictures from the concert because I'm so excited. I'm gonna get there at, like, anyways, but I was really, I'll go into Halsey here soon because that's actually my next topic. Because you always see me with my little journal. I guess I write down what I want to talk about with you guys. I think about it. I don't just get on here and yap. I put thought into what we talk about. But the skirt, I am just obsessed with it, and I will definitely be, like, it was a skirt that, like, I've had since, like, my freshman year of high school. And I would wear it every once in a blue moon. And it's the type of thing I was like, I should just donate it because it was very high school looking, you know, just like a very straight cut jean skirt. And so for that reason, it just didn't fit me that great because my waistline is still pretty much the same. Like, I haven't grown that much, like, since I was a freshman in high school. Like, I'm very short. I don't know if you can tell in video, like, I'm 5'2". I've always been, like, so itty bitty. So a lot of my stuff from high school I've just kept because I can still fit it. But it doesn't fit me the same anymore. It's like, I can still fit a lot of stuff from when I was that age, but it just doesn't, like, fit the same anymore. Pretty much. But it is, so I hadn't been wearing it, but I'm just so happy with, like, how it came out. Like, it's so cute! And just, like, edgy and cool, and just to think that, like, wow, like, something that I used to wear as, like, a really young teenager is now, like, a really fun, cool thing that, like, I will totally be accessorizing with, and it makes me really excited to just, like, And I felt free to do it because I was like, it was something I was probably going to get rid of anyway. So just like going at my wardrobe and like cutting it up and just reshaping it into something, I'm so excited. So yeah, doing hands-on activities and failing, let's do that, guys. Let's do that. And then, you know, as throughout the year, post, send me in your flops. Send me in your flops and then send me in your successes. Like, this was the flop and now I succeeded. I want to see them. Help inspire me, because I'm saying all this, but like, I'm saying it because I also have to remember it, because I get really frustrated with myself and I'm trying to outgrow that. I'm working on myself. My water bottle looks like my pajamas and the chair had a baby. You know? Yeah. That's what it's giving. Okay, Halsey. Let's talk about them. Halsey is... I know, like, a lot of people know who Halsey is, but I don't think they really know Halsey. Like, if you are a girly who is trying to deconstruct their relationship with men and how men view them and how... Just, if you are a girly and you are trying to deconstruct patriarchy and the way men view you in relationship to dating and, like, sex and orientation, like, if you're exploring, like, queerness, being bi, I need you to re-listen to Halsey's entire discography from start to finish. I need you to witness the evolution, and I need you to do some poetry class with yourself over Halsey's entire discography. Halsey's brain is unreal to me. Ashley! That's Halsey's name. Ashley! I love you, and I can't wait to see you in like 2 days. I'm so excited. I've gone to more Halsey concerts than any other artist. I got into Halsey when I was around, like, 13. I was in middle school. And I kept it very hush-hush. Because Halsey's first album is Badlands. And Halsey sings about a lot of naughty things on that album. And when I was 13, I thought it was so scandalous. I mean, like, her music is pretty intense, actually. But, like... So I kept it very secret, and I did not go to the Badlands tour, because I did not want to tell my parents I even listened to that music, let alone go to the concert with them, and then be like, you listen to this? Like, you know? And the thing that got me about Halsey back in the day on Twitter, where I was then locked in, and I was like, oh my gosh, Halsey's just like me for real, is, I'm grabbing a prop. It's the love of my life, Kylo Ren. Yep. So there was a tweet back in the day, like there was, like on Twitter and Tumblr, there was this trend being like, blank is about this character, everyone boos, but the writer stands up in the back of the room and says it's true. Like, that was the format. And somebody had tweeted, Control by Halsey is about Kylo Ren. And then Halsey retweeted, from the back of the room, Halsey herself stands up and says, it's true. And I think it's just a joke. Like, I don't think the song was literally written for Kylo Ren. But that had me back in the day, because I would listen to Badlands. The reason I got Spotify Premium when I was young, the first thing I ever was spending money on. The first thing I ever, like, I did not have a consistent paycheck, obviously, back then. Like, I did not have a job. And we just put Kylo Ren right here. He's here. He's with us today now. Like, my Christmas money, whatever, I would save it in my bank account. And I would, Spotify Premium back in the day, for just no ads, it literally used to be like $5. So it was $5 a month or whatever, and I would pay for Spotify Premium so that while I was reading Raylo fanfiction, I could listen to songs, like I could listen to music to set the scene for whatever was happening in the fanfiction. And that's why for like 3-4 years straight, my number one most listened to song was Across the Stars from the episode 2 of Star Wars. My most listened to, because Rey and Kylo Ren didn't have a love theme. But I would listen to Badlands, and put that into, like, Star Wars scenes that I'd read. Like, if they were in the Falcon together and they were, like, you know, him and Rey are out racing, you know, someone trying to chase them, Drive. Okay? Yeah. Like, or, you know, there's, like, he's being tortured by Snoke. Gasoline. Like, oh my gosh. So then when Halsey retweeted that, I literally was like, she just like me for real. And that was when I really locked into Halsey, because I was like, we're reading the same fan fictions. And, like, Halsey, like, multiple times in my life was like, I'm in your walls and I'm watching you. And I continue to feel that way to this day. And Halsey's writing is just so spectacular. She just absolutely captures what it is like to... Halsey... Also because Halsey uses she, they pronouns, as far as I'm aware. Like, their marketing team will use they for Halsey, but also use she. So I'm thinking it's just, like, the down low she, they, like, without fully announcing it, but the real ones who get it. Also me is she, they, bisexual? Like, yeah. And so, what was I saying? This is when the ADHD, it hits, and I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about. God! You all get that? Like, for you have ADHD, like, I'm sure you do. I don't even know why I asked that, but I'm just like, because, well, also Halsey is definitely, like, has made references in the past to being a neurotypical girly. But, okay, here's what I was gonna say. Back on track. Halsey really captures what it's like to be pursued and to be a pursuer in multiple things. In relationships, in career, in mental health, like, it's, like, she talks about such a wide variety of topics. Like, she talks about her relationship with her parents. She talks about, now she has a son, she talks about her relationship with her son. She talks about every relationship she's ever been in, like, in such a compelling way. And it's just, like, I just relate to it so much. It's the bisexual she, they experience. Like, and Halsey fucking nails it. Halsey has just been there for me and really will break down for you, like, the issue. And I need everyone to revisit Halsey. This is, like, not an ask. This is a demand. I need you all to lock in and revisit Halsey. Because, like, everyone kind of, like, knows Halsey. Like, if you say, oh, like, I love Halsey, they're like, yeah, they know who that is. But it's like, I need you to really look at the words. Because the lyricism is unreal in a Halsey album. Like, okay. One of my favorite songs from The Great Impersonator, which even my friends who are Halsey stan didn't listen to, and shame on you all, because The Great Impersonator, I'm gonna say it, I think it's my favorite Halsey album of all time. And it just might be. It just might be. But that's really hard, because every single album, literally, at some point I think I've said that. So, I don't even know. Halsey's entire discography is just, literally the entire discography, like, there's just, like, and so few songs that I skip. So astronomically few songs that I skip. It's unreal. So, every single song on The Great Impersonator is just unreal and so good. But the song I want to talk about is Arsonist. So in the song Arsonist, the song starts off with Halsey speaking in reverse. And I can't find the exact reverse lyrics. I just tried to look them up and I couldn't find it, so it's not happening. And basically, to sum it up, but it's, like, beautifully written, so I wish I had it, which is, like, makes me upset that I don't, but whatever. Basically, it's something along the lines of Halsey says, you think you met a god, but the god was you disguised as a god, which justified everything you've ever done and said. It's something in the realm of that, which is, like, a crazy statement. But that is all then in reference, the speaking in reversal, is a reference to her first album from Badlands, which is sung Young God, which she starts off speaking in reverse as well. And it's all referential to that. So you're already starting off with being self-referential in that way, which is just like a different level of thinking about your work on a higher level, which is astounding to me and I'm obsessed with. But, and you could break down that whole statement in reversal too for like ever, but we're going to skip that because I don't have the actual quote, and I'm not going to misquote Halsey because I wouldn't dare. Even though I just did. I'm so sorry. Anyways. In the song, Halsey says, this whole song is about her relationship with the father of her child. And she says, she's comparing him to an arsonist. That's the whole point of the song. She says, at the beginning of the song, arsonist, burning down the world to feel its heat. The arsonist doesn't feel the embers on his feet. And arsonist, your human starter kit came incomplete. My apologies, arsonist. You loved me. Now what? And we're only gonna break down this first verse because I could be here all day, and you didn't ask for that. Basically, what Halsey is saying within that first verse is your form of showing love is burning things down. So, because you in your own sick way loved me, you tried to burn me alive. You tried to destroy me. But my apologies, I couldn't let you destroy me. Opening statement? That's fucking crazy. Are we locked in? And the whole song is just, oh my god, which I'm going to stop because we could be here all day. So like that is one verse on one song on one album, and this is Halsey's discography. Like I need you all to lock in. This is again not a request, it's a demand. I also have Halsey's poetry book called I Would Leave Me If I Could. I got that for Christmas, and I've been reading through that. I was going to read you some poetry from that, too, that I really connected to, but I'm just going to stop, because I think I've made my point, and I can't even do it without getting so freaking excited that I lose my mind, and I turn into a crazy person! I don't have it in me to be normal! I can't be normal, and I won't be normal! Don't ever ask me to be normal, because I'm not going to do it! That's that. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, is going to see Halsey, and I'm literally going to get there at, like, oh my god, the concert starts at 8, but I've been seeing online that people are lining up, like, 12 hours before the concert. So I fear I may have to. And, like, I wish I wasn't going to night 1 of the concert, because then I could look up how early people lined up, because Halsey's playing 3 nights in a row, and I really wish I could see, like, how early people line up for this venue. But alas, I'm probably just gonna go and, get through it, quite frankly, and bring a book and a pillow to sit on, and get through it. So yeah, that's gonna be me. On Tuesday, I'm gonna sit in the line for 12 hours, and then my poor boyfriend is gonna come bring me my outfit to change into, and he'll sit in line while I go change and do my makeup. And then, cause it's gonna be cold, and I cannot be wearing the itty bitty outfit that I'm wearing outside, even in my winter coat. It's gonna be, like, thankfully, like, 40 degrees out, so I'm very grateful for that. But that's what I'll be doing Tuesday, and I'm very excited. So, yeah, Halsey stands, where you at? Hit me up. We'll sit in line together. Let's girly pop together, okay? And let's move on. Okay, so at the beginning of the podcast, I was talking about that I've been very meditative, and I've been thinking a lot's going on in the world right now, if you haven't been paying attention. And I've been thinking a lot on that, especially because I have this platform now, and I want to always advocate for the right things. And so I'm going to take time to do that. And I think it's very easy to see that we're once again, right at this beginning of this year, are at a turning point in history. And we all need to lock in. Like, it's really not an option to be like, I'm not political, I'm not really paying attention to what's going on right now. Like, that's not an option. So I'm going to give you some homework to do that is just, like, you gotta do it. It's not up for debate. I'm going to give you some homework and you're going to do it, okay? With yourself. And then you're going to tell other people to do it too. Because I also understand I'm always coming from my point of view as an activist. Like, I'm always coming from the point of view of, like, a chronically online, like, bisexual white girl. That's who I am, and I'm gonna stay self-aware in that, and I'm going to go into that very deeply, and, like, the headline of, like, what I'm talking about today. So, I think right now, with what's going on, especially the white people who are listening to this, we are at a point where, and we're going to deconstruct this together, okay? And I'm not going to mince my words. We are at a point where whiteness is a choice. Okay. So, what do I mean by that? Now, for the past couple of weeks, I've been telling you about the Howard Zinn book, A People's History of the United States, 1492 to present. And I'm going to read you a quote from it. This book is very dense. Number one, okay, the literal, like, if you want literal homework, I need you to read this book. I need you to lock in and read this book. It is an extraordinarily hard read, but, like, it needs to be done. It's everything history class refused to tell you from elementary school to high school. And it's the uncomfortable reality that you need to sit with. And reading this book has helped me articulate all of this, everything that I'm about to articulate. It's helping me articulate that. And it's a concept that I've been kind of speaking about to the white people in my life quite a bit recently. And I'm at the point where I feel confident enough to speak on it, and I'm putting it online, and I need you all to lock in. Sorry, the fun tone's gone, but, like, the point of the channel is activism, actually, so that's actually what you're here for, and I try to disguise it as, like, fun and upbeat, but, like, no, this is serious, so we're all gonna sit, and you're gonna deal with being uncomfortable for a little bit to take in the information, because it's really important, and you gotta do it. So, I'm gonna start off with this quote first, from the book. Okay. So, right, what I said to you earlier is whiteness is a choice, and we're going to get into that. The quote from the book is, "Was their culture inferior, and so subject to easy destruction? Inferior in military capability, yes. Vulnerable to whites with guns and ships, but in no other way except that cultures that are different are often taken as inferior, especially when such a judgment is practical and profitable." Okay. That was a mouthful, but we're going to break it down together. So, this is from chapter 2, the beginning of chapter 2, and it is... This entire book does such a great job of showing how America, the entire foundation of the entire colonization of this region, has always been about how whiteness became a thing, because whiteness is not an inherent thing. Like, what I'm going to try to get through to you is that if you think you're white, you're not, and that is a concept that was built to institutionalize racism and genocide. And I need you to so connecting with that and being like I am white, like, even though, like, culturally and societally right now, like, yes, you are, I need you to lock into understanding this concept, and I'm gonna give you some redirection. And yeah. So this is in chapter 2, and it's speaking on slavery, and it's talking about the slave trade. So it says, was their culture inferior and so subject to easy destruction? Inferior in military capability, yes. Vulnerable to whites with guns and ships, but in no other way, except that cultures that are different are often taken as inferior, especially when such a judgment is practical and profitable. That is, like, absolutely, like, that was relevant in, like, the 1400s, and that's relevant now if you think about everything our military is doing. Of, like, they are always trying to use race to make other cultures seem inferior as an excuse to overthrow them. And it's like, it is like, because of military power, white society and culture has always had the ability to dominate other cultures and say that their culture is superior, but it's never actually been cultural superiority. It has always been military superiority. Now, whiteness was, we're going to get into how whiteness is at this point, a choice. And a choice you need to not be making and identifying with. Because in the first chapter of this book, Howard Zinn really breaks down what it was like for early settlers to first come to the Americas and how they began genociding Native Americans. And it was really, really rooted in inferiority. And right when these people first came over, they did not see themselves as white. They saw themselves as a representation of whatever country and religion, usually, that they were originated from. And them being called, like, the white man, being called white, was actually given to them by the natives who saw them and were calling them white, and homogenizing all white people into the same, because of course they don't give a shit if they can't conceptualize the difference between being Spanish and English. Like, they don't give a fuck, because of course, like, why would they? There's no difference to them. It doesn't matter. But at the time, settlers were still identifying themselves as either, like, Spanish or English or whatever. And whiteness started being developed, the homogenizing of like, because if you go to Europe, they're like, Italians and Germans have a very different culture, and they will let you know, they will be offended if you, any European will be offended. Someone who is still living in Europe, they will be offended if you confuse their cultures, because they're like, they have cultural pride and they have their own traditions and their own way of life. But to start, right, so the settlers were coming over, and as they were absolutely failing to start up civilization, like, they were failing horribly, they were dying in mass numbers, and this is me summarizing the first chapter, but you still need to read this book. They were dying horrifically because they did not have the skill set to survive in these new lands, and they started relying on the natives to, like their crops and stuff to survive. And so then, then they're starting to steal from them, and that's when fights are breaking out. And they were so frustrated that they could not live as successfully as they could off the land. Like, they were so frustrated that they could not cultivate culture and society in these new lands, that as tensions were rising, they started to feel incredibly inferior. And that's when they were like, well, we are having an inferior lifestyle. They couldn't control that. And the book goes into it so much better. And I'm really, really summarizing. And there's a reason this book is so dense. And again, you need to read it. But they could not control their lifestyle, but what they could control was their ability to conquer. And so that's what they would do. They would go in and kill them and take everything because they could not do it themselves. And it would make them feel superior. Essentially what it is, and that's what chapter 1, among many things, it breaks down that idea. But I want you, if you're a white person, to understand that the homogenization of European culture into whiteness was always used as a means to an end to be superior to people of color. Whiteness as white, because Europeans, yes, Europeans are also, like, white, but they would not identify as white. They would identify as, like, their nationality. And so, and there's, obviously, they have huge racism problems also in, like, Europe, and that's their own thing, and, like, I can't speak on, like, European race politics, so I'm speaking on Americans, but, like, whiteness, what we know as today, was then developed too, again, as, like, slaves were being brought over to America. Then white people, again, they just started homogenizing and deciding, like, they were going to be teammates and allies against people of color as they brought them to this country, or if they were already here, killing them. And the crazy thing is like, back in Europe, only, like literally, while this is happening in America, in the Americas, like, what's happening in Europe during that time period is also, like, those groups of people still don't like each other, you know? You still have these different nationalities clashing with each other. But it became culturally beneficial in America to form, like, the White Alliance. And so, I think, and what has happened through, like, the 500 years that white people have been on this continent is that they have slowly been losing their heritage and their traditions of what, like, the good traditions that rooted them and grounded them in reality. They have lost them to wanting the superiority complex of whiteness. Like, whiteness is a superiority complex. Like, the whole conceptualization of it is a superiority complex. And so what I'm saying is, like, whiteness is a choice. Like, that superiority complex is a choice. And they think it's a cultural thing, like, right? They think whiteness is like, they think white culture, like, the reason people joke, like, white people don't have a culture is because white culture is the homogenization of all European culture, and it's not, but it's like, but it's not even, like, combining cultural things. It's stripping back all of those things and becoming, like, a blank slate that doesn't really represent anything but, like, the vessel that whiteness has done, which has been to assert superiority. Okay? So are we now clicking and understanding how, so if you don't want to call it whiteness as a choice, it's like the superiority complex around being white is a choice. And I have a feeling anyone listening to me is probably not making the choice to have a superiority complex. Just, I don't think you probably would have gotten this far into listening to me. But I know we all have people in our lives who make those choices. And we are at a point, especially with, like, what has happened with the recent shooting that happened. It is horrible and atrocious, the same way every single other, the mass shooting problem that we have in this country, like, is atrocious and horrible. But this one gives us as a white person with your white family and your conservative family, this is giving you a unique opportunity. And it's horrible that at this point, we're at a point in society, and I recognize that we have to weaponize atrocities to have a conversation. But that's where we're at. End of the day. You need to be having conversations with your conservative family members about this, and the way you need to be going about it is, I think a lot of us, we have to start viewing, so, like, people who do make the choice of whiteness, it's like a cult. Like, it's a cult of whiteness, and you have to start seeing them as victims. You are entitled to your anger, and you're entitled to your frustration, but we have to start developing empathy towards them as victims. Like, they are victims of whiteness. And we need to start learning how to culturally speak about it differently. Because right, a lot of these conservative white people only see it as, like, you're attacking me. You're attacking who I am. But we have to come at an angle of, like, but this isn't who you are. We have to go into the conversation, unfortunately, with, like, acting like, giving them more good faith than they have deserved after everything they've done. But it's, like, there has to, and this is, I'm saying on, like, a family to family level. I think within family units, this is how we fight back. Is all of us participating in this conversation and trying to have everything that I just said. Again, I want you to read this book so that you can also speak on it. But, like, trying to break that down to your white family members of, like, because, like, for me, like, this was a relatively easy thing for me to deconstruct because I am Irish and Indonesian, largely. And the thing is, like, my family came over in like, the 1920s, and, like, back then, like, that's the crazy thing, like, Irish people were not considered to be white. Like, they came to New York, and now I'm back in New York, which is interesting. But they came to New York, and they couldn't work. They had to move all the way to San Francisco to get work, because they couldn't get work in New York, because they wouldn't hire Irish people, because they weren't considered white. And so it's interesting, because I, like, 100%, like, I, of course, to everyone in society that I interact with, am viewed as white. Because societally, that's what it is agreed upon. But, like, it's interesting that even 100 years ago, that would not have been the case. Which just goes to my point of saying of, like, whiteness is a conceptual thing. And drink some water. But because of that, because I always grew up about my family talking about, like, how my great-grandparents dealt with that and how they had to move to California and, you know, what it was like for them to be immigrants. And I was always raised with, like, Irish cultural traditions and, like, Irish mentality. Like, I would always hear, like, if I was misbehaving in some sort of way that was very culturally Irish, my mom would be like, you're being really Irish right now. In, like, a negative way. But there was also appraisal around it, too. Like, my family would very much praise themselves for, like, you know, the Irish people, we tend to have an affinity with nature. We have a connection to nature that, like, a lot of cultures, like, especially, you know, homogenized white cultures, don't have an appreciation for nature. And, like, my grandma, I was raised with stories of fairies. Like, fairies were integral to my childhood because my grandma would tell me, like, Irish folk tales of fairies, you know, because my family is Irish. So I was not really raised around, like, having pride in whiteness. I was raised in having pride in being Irish. And the same thing goes for, like, being Indonesian. So my dad is part Indonesian, and my grandfather, he was born in Jakarta, or he was born in he was Irish and Dutch. Or not Irish, he wasn't Irish at all. He was Indonesian and Dutch. Either way, he wasn't born in America. I'm pretty sure he was born in Jakarta. And he, you know, so then he had a completely different experience than my Irish immigrant families had, but he came over in the 60s. And so my dad and my mom, they grew up in California, and it was very normal that my dad was mixed Irish and Indonesian. That was very, like, maybe not that specific pairing, but, like, being part Asian was not a big deal at all. And then he moved to Indiana in the very, very early 2000s before I was born, and he would talk about, he jokes all the time about the weird comments that he would get about, like, people being like, what are you? Like, we can't even figure you out. And stuff like that. So it's like, again, he wouldn't necessarily be, you know, he wouldn't receive ill treatment in the sense of, like, he wasn't not allowed to do things. It's not like he was, like, refused service, you know, like, it wasn't like institutionally harmful racism, but he definitely would get, like, weird racist, to this day still gets weird racist comments by weird people in Indiana. But it was, especially in the early 2000s, like, there's this story about, like, a one time, like, my parents were in line for something, and some kid was, like, making, like, the squinty eye, like, pulling his eyelids, like, to, like, make squinty eyes at him, and, like, my mom wanted to, like, beat up this child. I think that's the story. I think I'm retelling it correctly. But it's just, like, so it's interesting because I always grew up culturally hearing those stories. It just made deconstructing whiteness in the way that I am right now. I think it made it a lot easier for me because I grew up hearing those things, and it's just, you know. But I still grew up in white America, like suburban white America. And I was very much preached whiteness. Like, and I want you to hear the word that I just used. Preached whiteness. It is something that is inherently, like, you know, there's the imagery that they try to paint of, like, holiness and goodness surrounded by whiteness and purity, which was something that was very much fed to me as a kid consistently by being in an evangelical area, like the school groups that I was a part of, and like then I would go to my friend's house on the weekends and their parents would make me go to church with them and try to get me to start going to church with them every weekend. Like, I had that happen so many times throughout my childhood, and so like I really was very much like, I didn't know better as a kid. I very much like drank the Kool-Aid just to like fit in with my peer groups, and it was something by the time, because again I was raised in like, you know, a second generation immigrant household. By the time I got to high school and like Trump became president, I deconstructed that all very, very quickly. But I can see how if you didn't have that experience, even if you are a left-leaning white person, like, I'm telling you, if you're a white person and you're leftist, you're not left enough. I'm not left enough, and I think I'm the most leftist person one of the most leftist people I know in my life. Like, and I always know I can be more educated, and education is a constant thing. It is always something to be engaging with. It is not like a one and done thing. You don't learn something and change the behavior and now it's good, because this can be deconstructed down to atoms, okay? And that deconstruction process, like, I think there's also a lot of shame that if you grew up and, you know, having whiteness and holiness of whiteness preached to you, it is a hard thing to deconstruct, and there is like shame and tied to that of like where you participated in that, right? But it's your job to deconstruct that and be better, because we're at a place where if you are, like, again, if you think you're left, you're not far left enough. You're not. And we can always be pushing towards understanding these things better. And this was the homework I was going to assign you before I, you know, assigned you this. Let's see how many pages this book is. Before I assigned you a 688 page book, which is your homework. And if you have Spotify or like any like audiobook thing, the audiobook is online too. I would recommend getting the actual book and listening to the audiobook to really, and reading each chapter twice before you move on to the next one, so that you understand what's going on as you go into the next chapter. Like, because that's why this book is taking me so damn long, because I'm on, you know, whatever page I'm on, but I've read it twice up to that point. But that's my homework, but also my other homework is, like, okay, like, genetically, what is your family? Like, are you Italian? Are you Spanish? Are you Dutch? Are you German? Are you Irish? Are you English? How did your family get to America? Deconstruct all of that. Like, understand, and then that will help you understand where your family's coming from in their beliefs. Like, how their beliefs developed, depending on, like, how long they've been in this country. And I need you to deconstruct that maybe you're, like, a 10th generation immigrant, okay? But, like, deconstruct what that really means. Understand, look at a map and go, where did my family start from, and how did they get here? Doing that work, and then trying to understand, like, culturally, you know, and if your family has been in America, like, you have some distant relative that was, like, on the Mayflower, you're probably a mix of a lot of things, like, they didn't probably stay consistent with, because, again, whiteness got homogenized, so understand how many different cultures you're from, and start learning about those cultures, learn about those mentalities, understand why they've developed into what they've developed today, and understanding that will help you speak to your relatives about their conservatism. Because at the end of the day, like, I have some very conservative family members that for a very long time I was like, they're so conservative, I can't speak to you because I would get so angry. Which rightfully so, like, you know, I think I think there are conservative family members that you can have a good faith conversation with because they are horribly misguided, and I've started to develop empathy for them because I'm like, they have been so manipulated and so lied to. And when you start looking at it from, like, the perspective of how they grew up and what was preached to them and the misinformation that has been told to them relentlessly for their entire life, what has recently happened is the opportunity to start having this conversation of everything we just talked about and be patient with them and really try to get through to them. And I think, there's a certain point of, like, okay, if you have a family member who is blatantly spouting, like, Nazi rhetoric, if you're trying to help them understand what's happening with the immigration crisis that's going on in this country right now, and you really break it down of, like, what's happening to the immigrants that they're abducting, and if they're just like, yeah, I'm okay with that, like, you really break it down, and like, this is what's happening, this is the treatment, these are the conditions, and they're just like, I'm okay with that, your family member is a Nazi. There, no if, no buts about it. Like, they are a Nazi, and that's when you need to make, and it might feel hard, it might not feel like a hard choice, that's when you have to go, I can't speak to you anymore, and that is then the lesson of, like, you are going to lose everyone in your life who is a good human being. And it is then, too, having the conversation with your other white relatives who won't cut that person off and be like, they are a Nazi. There is no difference between you and being a Nazi. Yeah. But the relatives you can have a conversation with, even if you only get through to them a little bit, like, that is, you have to take those fights in your home. We have to be doing it. And I know it's like, I hear this mentality online was like, well, it's not my job to educate anyone. No, it fucking is. It literally is. And even if it never gets through to them, it is still important that it was said. And it's important that you said it and went through that process of saying it. So, one, you can sleep with yourself at night. And two, and you're not going to say everything perfectly. It's not going to go, but again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, this all or nothing mentality. Like, what we struggle with so much in the left is, like, purity, like, being the perfect leftist. No one's going to be the perfect leftist because like I said earlier, we're never far left enough. We're always learning. And because history is always happening, and your change in perspective on history is going to change how you view politics. Politics, it's so much deeper than what bill is being passed and do you support it. It is a combination of ethics and understanding of history and understanding of policy, and it's never going to be perfect because the current events reshape how we view history, and we can't even get into the purity problem on the left, but you don't have to be a perfect leftist to be a leftist. The fact that as long as you try, and as long as you try to have that conversation, and it's also good for you to learn how to articulate these things, because it's not even your family members. Sometimes you're going to be like a coworker situation, and your coworker is going to say something, because I've been having these arguments. I can remember so clearly in high school, in my senior year of high school, I had history class first thing in the morning. It was my first class that I had that day. And I had a huge drug problem in high school. And I would rip my dab pen. I'd rip that bitch before I went to my history class because I was going in ready to fight. It was me, and I had like 2 classmates of color. And the 3 of us would be the only ones who wouldn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Because, like, while that was happening, like, we were just coming out of COVID. And everything that was happening was atrocious. And it's like, I was not standing up and saying the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be part of your cult. And so, there was me in one corner, and there was this one kid who would sit at the other corner of the classroom. He wore a cowboy hat every day. He sat right under the flag. He'd look up at it, and he'd really say the pledge. And every morning I had this great history teacher. He was so cool, and he had a glass eye. He was dope. Isn't that such a thing for a history teacher to have a glass eye? Anyways, we would sit at opposite corners, and he would pull up like a headline, and he'd be like, let's discuss this headline. Of course, I always stood up and would say something, and I would get really, really mad when just conservative straw man techniques or any logical fallacy techniques would be used against me, and at the time I didn't properly know how to articulate or argue against them. So I really had started mastering at that point in my life. That's when I dove into the mastery of debate skills and how to argue with conservatives. So it is a skill. Again, you're not going to do it perfectly, and that's fine. It is the process of learning how to have these conversations with difficult people that is so important, that we all need to master. And we have come so far, and I know so many people in my generation have done that, but it's you need to not be afraid to ruin the family event. You need to not be, because that is the perfect time to do it. They need to see that if you are going to behave this way and this is really what you're going to do, you are ruining Thanksgiving by being that way, and then again you're gonna get a lot of shit and whatever, but that's if you're getting shit, you're doing it right, okay? Because you're saying something enough to piss them all off, and we don't owe conservative relatives a safe space. I paused because I loved that. You do not owe your conservative relatives a safe space when they don't create a safe country because they voted for Epstein's best friend, who no. You do not owe a safe space and a safe Thanksgiving environment or family event environment to somebody who is protecting pedophiles, who is a war criminal, who is a convicted felon. If they worship a convicted felon, I don't owe you a safe space. And you can say that. But my point is, you need to have these conversations because you need to learn how to have these conversations. So even if you don't articulate it correctly, it is not, the all or nothing mentality has to be thrown out when it comes to dealing with these things. And it is so vital, and it's so important. And it's also important you learn how to articulate these things, because someday, I mean, we're adults now. I don't know how old everyone in my audience is, but someday I'm going to be a parent, and I need to know how to speak about these things with my children. I need to be able to articulate this very well. When they have questions, I need to have the answers. And I need to know enough where if I don't have the answers, I know where to go searching for them. And we all need to learn to articulate these things so when we have children, we can educate our children, and our children can bring about a different future than what we lived through. And this work now will pay off in ways we literally can't imagine. And Hamilton has so many flaws, but it's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. I think Hamilton does such a good job, and I think I'm be talking about Hamilton right now, but it's Hamilton does such a good job of truly capturing the spirit of what we want America to be, the idealism of what America could be. I think it captures that. I think it captures that beautifully, and it's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see, and you have to do the work. You have to sow the ground. You have to put in the seeds, and you have to water the baby plant and know that you are not going to get to taste the fruits of your labor, hypothetically. But God, don't you want your children to? Don't you want your grandchildren to? Don't you want the children of people you will never meet to have a tree to sit under? And what's crazy to me is, because then I could go down the whole pipeline of religion, because I also could speak so endlessly on the Bible and how the Bible is so interconnected to all of this, and it's at some point I gotta wrap it up, because I think I've been talking for 30 minutes about this topic, because I could talk forever, but it's just I'm deciding if I'm wrapping it up. Because I have more to say. Because I always have more to say on this. And I'm glad that I took this tone with this episode today, because that's what this podcast is really about. It's about having these tough conversations. And hopefully helping other people deconstruct, because, like, you know, right now, things feel really helpless, because it's like, what can I do? You know, like, right? It's like I voted correctly, and I'm going to protest, and I believe in the right things, but it feels like, I think a lot of us get trapped in this feeling of helplessness. And the thing is, it's not worthless. Because if you're building a lifestyle and a morality and a mindset with pure intention, it's so much about intentionality. You cannot see right now the benefits, but you have to trust that they will materialize someday. And it's in how you treat other people, and how that mentality is, again, going to shape your children's future. And not even, like, if you're someone who's like, I don't ever want kids, well, you are going to have friends who have children. And you are going to be an aunt. You're going to be an uncle. And even, let's say, like, you have a conservative sibling, who they could have a kid someday who is queer. Like, let's say you're the queer sibling, and you have the conservative sibling, and someday they have a kid, and their kid's queer. And who are they going to turn to? They're going to turn to you, okay? Because you have decided to be openly yourself and have the policies that you have. And that kid, who is going through the same thing you went through growing up, is going to come searching for you. And you, even though you're not their parent, you're their aunt or their uncle, they're going to come searching for answers. Find those answers now so that you have them for them. And that's what's going to shape the future, be different. Like, I think about even, like, I can even see it now in, like, how really young Gen Z, Gen Alpha bordering Gen Z behave compared to, like, how I grew up, like, in middle school. Like, my brother is in the 8th grade, and I think about his experience of going through the 8th grade. He is queer, and, like, his queer experience in middle school compared to mine is astronomically different. Like, me and my queer friends were all literally trying not to off ourselves. He's never struggled with that, thank God. But, like, and even, like, yeah, he's definitely had some, it's not perfect, but, like, they have, like, a queer alliance, like, you know, club that he can go to, that was started when I was in the 6th grade. And it was, like, the 7th graders, I think at the time, had, like, fought to make that club happen. But it's, like, I didn't feel brave enough to go, because I was like, well, they barely got that club to be allowed. Now, it's been a club for years, and now when he was 6th grade, he's like, oh, I'm gonna go to that. So they live in a completely different world, and they've been listening to us, their noisy Gen Z siblings, fight in their millennial aunt and uncles, you know, fight for these things, and they've seen that fight. Like, the fight, even if you get punched and knocked down a million times, it's them seeing how many times you've got up that will inspire them, and it has shaped their mentalities and how they respond to these things. So it's like, even if you can't see it right now, like, it is the ice block that you have to take the chip out every day. It's about doing the hands-on thing, like we talked about earlier, like, and you know, getting out of your phone and learning to be a person again. It's about that. And it is about not having that all or nothing mentality. And it's about doing the deconstruction work. And also, something I want to say, something that's like, right, you're listening to me right now, and I'm a white person, I just talked about this. You need to go listen to not a white person speak about these things. There are so many wonderful POC creators that have hundreds of millions of hours of content of them breaking these things down. You need to go listen to them, like, in this process. Like, you can't just comfortably listen to white creators and be like, well, I'm doing the deconstruction work. No, you have to go listen, like, to their actual perspective and not a white person retelling their perspective. You have to go engage with their fight in a hands-on way, and you have to listen to them more than you listen to me. Like, and that goes for anyone fighting their own fight. That is, like, if you want to learn about women's issues, you need to listen to women. If you want to learn about queer issues, you need to listen to a queer person. And if you want to understand race, you need to listen to somebody who's not the same race as you. And again, I could talk about this forever and ever and ever. I could, like, you can't even beat the dead horse. The horse is not dead. So once we kill it, then we can beat the dead horse. I think people feel like talking about race is the beating the dead horse issue. But actually it's not, because it's still like, this entire country was built upon race issues. And until you can fully, like, again, not fully again, because you're never going to fully understand anything, but until you can grasp that in a real tangible way, you can't be helpful. But the fact that if you're trying actively, like that, again, that's enough. Whew! I think we move on to the next topic, because this will become the world's longest segment. But I think that this podcast is going in a direction where we're doing a lot more segments like these, and maybe it's a little less fun, silly times, because this is actually what I care about. So I think that's plenty of food for thought. Read Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States of America. Just do it. That's what you gotta do. And let that take you places. Cheers. So, something else I've been thinking about is I do want to organize some sort of political group at, like, that does rallies and stuff like that. And I really think, unless this maybe already exists, but, like, I want this to be, like, a regular thing of, like, what would everyone think about if we started doing, like, One Piece political rallies, like, One Piece fans? I need the One Piece fans to lock in, because, again, I was watching the One Piece episode today, and I was like, oh my, and, like, like, the political rallies, you know, and then, like, doing things in an organized effort way, like, collectively as One Piece fans. I have this idea is very extensive, actually, and I'm going to figure out, but it's a new idea, so I don't exactly know how to articulate it yet. I'm just putting it out in the universe. That's something I want to do, and then also we can use it as a way to convince other people to watch One Piece, because it needs to happen. I need everyone to watch One Piece. Again, me when I'm like, world's longest book is homework, and watch One Piece as homework. But they're the best, it's the best, and I need you to watch One Piece. It's not an ask, it's a demand. I need everyone to lock in to One Piece. And I'm sick of asking, but I'm gonna ask every week. I'm gonna be like, comment what episode of One Piece you're on. You started One Piece because I told you to. What episode are you on? Tell me. Okay? 485 was, I think, the episode that I watched that was, like, crazy. So just know, if you haven't ever got there, 485, crazy episode. And I need to start some sort of regular, like, group thing where people show up who are One Piece fans. We talk about politics. We talk about organizing, you know, ways to help the community as One Piece fans. And also I want to dive into, because there's this whole concept within One Piece of, like, you know, that Luffy has, the main character, he says his whole goal is to be king of the pirates. And his reason for wanting to be king of the pirates is because the king of the pirates is the freest person in the world. It's all about pirates versus the world government. And how, like, each pirate group is essentially becomes their own country. Like, if you raise a pirate flag, you basically set your own, and whatever rules are on your ship, like, those are the laws of your land. And subscribing to those. And I love this idea of, like, we all need to create our friend group. You all need a pirate flag. You all need a captain. You all need to decide what your roles are, and then you need to work as a tiny community together as like your own country of like, how do we help make sure everybody gets everything that they need. And I think if we could all like, then we all come together, like we're all Straw Hat Pirates, right? That's the idea of like the political rally. Like all the Straw Hat Pirates come together, but we all have our own ships and our own captain. You decide who is captain, and you all live your life. We all need to start living our life like pirates. I'm not playing with you guys, okay? Yo-ho, a pirate's life for me. God fucking damn it! We all need to start living like pirates! God! Like, we're all Straw Hat Pirates. We would all meet up.